In this episode, we speak with Chris Crosby, the CEO of Compass Datacenters, a company that designs and constructs data centers for some of the world's largest hyperscalers and cloud providers on campuses across the globe. The company has taken in over $4 billion of capital and is backed by Ontario Teachers and Brookfield, among others. In 2011, Chris's vision was to focus on greenfield projects and deliver customizable, scalable, sustainable, and low-cost data centers in an expedited timeframe. Since its inception, Compass Datacenters has embraced sustainability with the efficient use of land, green energy, water-free cooling, and building materials. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoy the show. If you like the episode, click to follow. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
So I'd love to start with one of your recent posts on LinkedIn, and I think it was so well written. And this is about your friend Robin Kuda of AirTrunk. You state, starting from zero is the hardest thing that anyone can do. A true entrepreneur. Those darkest moments are the loneliness. You know, this podcast is about entrepreneurship and the challenges you face and how to overcome those challenges. Can you tell us a little bit more about the sentiment behind what you were writing there? Clearly, you have direct experience of how hard it is.
Yeah, it's a lonely journey. I think you got to have a screw loose, I guess, so to speak, to be willing to risk it all and to do the types of things that, I think Peter Thiel writes about it in 0 to 1. And I was giving Robin credit on 0 to scale, which I think is even another element to it. And the times where you have those real questions that come in, whether it's what's the business going to look like? Are we going to keep it? How are employees going to be taken care of? What's going to happen? Ultimately, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. And, those are lonely nights, right? Those are times, the dry heaves, the kind of sitting there, the no clue how you're going to deal with the stress. What do you tell your loved ones? What do you not tell them? And if you're blessed, you've got some other fellow entrepreneurs that you can talk to that are in the club, so to speak. But it can get lonely, in those challenging windows because, ultimately, as an entrepreneur, you've said, hey, this is my idea and this is what we're going to go do. And you get people behind that vision. Well, it's your vision. And, at the end of the day, you've got to be the one that can help execute on it or get the right people that can help execute on it.
Well, to date, you've had billions of dollars of capital come into the business and you're off and running. I like to go back to the beginning. What first gave you the idea to start Compass Datacenters?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I had left my previous company, which I was one of the founders at, with Digital Realty, and had taken some time and kind of piddled around with a fiber thing and was with my father actually on a golf trip. I'd taken him over to Ireland and was looking at some different stuff in it. And he just told me, I've known you forever. You're not going to be happy till you finally do your own thing. And because, I've been part of founding of some companies, but it was always on a kind of a group type of deal. And so I had kept talking about on the data center side and the wholesale data center space, which had originated, but the need for these single customer facilities with the ability for that client to continue to grow and to control their own destiny. And that was the gist of Compass from the get-go. And then the how you build the watch. So that's the what time it is. The how you build the watch was really taking my manufacturing background. And I had gotten to practice some of that in my time at my previous company, but really taking that manufacturing concept into the world of design and construction. I really thought there were a lot of things missing and the inefficiency there. And so if you combined a different type of engagement model with a different way of doing things, I really thought there was something there. And that was the genesis of Compass.
And was the demand for data centers as strong then as it is today?
God, no. And it was one of those things. I had a lot of discipline in the early years for scale and for doing things that allowed for scale. But no, we were doing onesie twosie. And if anything, it's funny. My CFO, we were on a call the other day, and I said I was a shitty startup CEO. And Jared, my CFO, said, I wouldn't call it that. I would just say you were very disciplined around the things that could prevent you from scaling you didn't do. And that hurt the business early, but now it's been very valuable for the business.
And what were those things?
It's adhering to these manufacturing principles, the way we deal with our supply chain, the way we controlled the design and really made sure that it's not customized. The world of design and construction of real estate is everything's a snowflake. You can do whatever you want, and really sticking to prototypical and violating some of the practices that people do of maximizing the footprint on a piece of land versus what's optimized for a prototype. This type of thinking was just different. And, it's hard to stay disciplined around that stuff versus just taking the quick money.
When you think back on those maybe first 1 to 3 to 5 years, were there things that looking back on it, you would have done differently that could have like been an unlock for you earlier than when the unlocks started happening?
I think how you choose those investors is very important, especially when you're in an asset business like I am, a capital intensive business. You've really got to get folks that really align with the vision that you have. If you do just enough to get them to say yes on the first thing, but then everything else is a fight. And that said, I would tell you the amount of learning that you have in those early years, everything is builds on itself. And it's such an interesting thing, when you are in a growth industry and a growth business to use those experiences. I've never learned anything of any consequence unless it's been through failing. And it's those failures that allow you to grow as a person and as a leader and as a business. So I would just say that the biggest thing when you're an asset intensive business is making sure that you really do have alignment around that vision with who you're bringing as your partners.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little bit further into the capital aspect. But before that, you founded the company a little bit later on, right? Was it in your early 40s that you founded Compass?
So I was 39, yeah.
Comparing that to some of the founders today and in tech, it's not always the case, right? There's like kind of a curve associated with this. But tell us about that. Did you find it to be like tougher to do because you were like, oh man, I'm like a little bit later on in my years. This would have been better if it was 10 years earlier. Or was it just like that was the moment for you?
Yeah, it was a moment. I mean, I would say that my path was a little different. I started the first 10 years in telecom and really trying to work that corporate world. I started as computer science and kind of did like the 9 jobs in 9 years type of thing. And I really valued the time in the corporate world from teaching you about what big business, and we grew a business unit from 0 to 1 billion during my time there, that I was an observer and seeing how big companies work well and then also how they don't work well. And then I got to practice it at my next company, which was Digital Realty, and which we took from 0 as well, and got to practice that. And so this was really like, okay, now how do we really leverage all of those experiences into Compass? And that was the genesis of why we made culture at the core of everything. We hire and fire for culture, not for performance. You just learn so many lessons over all this time frame to really make it work differently, bringing that manufacturing lens, that vision, and then the discipline around those elements of culture first as an organization, and then those vision elements.
So this is a fascinating topic. Of course, culture, that's like the magic behind getting things to work, and it's elusive frequently. How did you establish a culture? How intentional were you at the beginning about the culture? And how do you find you're able to cultivate the right one?
Yeah, it's a great question. I learned that you have to have formal culture. I've seen it a road away. I've seen it, where it's part of the organization, but not all of it. So decided very intentionally culture was going to be the core. If you're going to start a new business, put your wife through that. That was going to be the thing. I wanted to go to a place that every day. And so I actually, just before here, I still do every new hire first culture orientation at Compass. I just finished it before I jumped on this podcast. But we've had 4 core convictions from the get-go and 2 principles. And the principles have since expanded out, but everything feeds out of our first core conviction, which is humility in and pride out, not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. And they're convictions, not values. We want people that walk around and feel convicted by it. Values, I want to go run a marathon, as my New Year's resolution. Convictions, I want to save my marriage. We want it to be that meaningful to our employees. And, we have scorecards. Our scorecards, 2/3 of it is culture. You get like little report cards in kindergarten type of thing, check, minus, check plus on how you're doing exhibiting our culture. And we have a culture and performance quadrant when we evaluate employees. So it is extremely formal. I think for a growth company, if you don't have that, your ability to have it dilute very quickly with any senior management changes, I don't see how you keep it together without it. You have to formalize it for a great growth business.
Mm-hmm. Putting culture as the top priority, was that in order to drive the performance? Or was that because this is the type of organization I want to build? Life is short. We want to interact with people the right way. What really was driving this need to have culture be front and center?
Strong culture allows you to have diversity of thought. Diversity of thought is absolutely essential to build greatness. I'm a strong personality. If I don't have people around me that can push back and do those things, like a company full of Chris Crosby's is a dumpster fire. If I don't have a culture that allows for that and that formality around that, then you can't get that diversity of thought. You can't have people from different backgrounds in companies that work well together, right? You get cliques and you get things like that unless you have a strong culture. So it was very, very intentional from that regard in order to drive to greatness. We don't want to be the biggest company in the data center space. We want to be the best. And so how we can be the best is by really focusing on these things.
And then how do you measure, if you have the scorecard, how do you know someone is truly abiding by your principles?
Yeah, so we still do reviews as an executive team. We have little quadrant reviews and things along those lines. We evaluate based upon how they're doing on culture, and we peer review to make sure that we don't have blind spots of people and how they exhibit their culture across organizations as well as within their own organization.
Got it. And now heading back to the capital side, listen to your track record before founding the company. One would assume you get in front of an investor. They'd be like, we get it. You have the right background to do this. Your thesis is well thought out. Here's the money. You're smiling, so it didn't go that way. But tell us a little bit about that part of the process.
It's amazing. Data centers are spending so much money. I think on a smaller scale, yeah, that's the case, right? But, when you are spending the hundreds of millions, billions of dollars that we're spending, right, we fit above everybody's financial authority policy. So you really are having to get buy-in from the top down. You become such a large percentage of any one investor and what they can do. So the amount of capital that's in the data center space, and especially post the AI boom, it's a fascinating time frame, right? This is a transformational economy time frame, the kind of stuff kids will read about in history book type of time frame. And so it's not that simple from a capital perspective. And there's a high hype factor that's there. We really haven't had a shakeout in the data center space of who are Class A providers, Class B and Class C. Like, you don't know that right now. And so as an investor, you're coming in and you're looking at a lot of different things. I do think that there's a lot associated with just the quantum of capital that prevents it from being that simple.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes what gives some investors assurances is the team. It's you and the team. How did you go about assembling your executive team?
So I did a do-over in 2015, 16, kind of started it again and started really with not trusting myself on hiring. And I've gotten a lot better at it now as I look back, 7, 8 years, but really just not trusting myself where I would plug holes based upon what I thought I could do subconsciously, right? And so really getting people who are people that are great at the things that I'm bad at. And up on my whiteboard above me, it says vision, it says execution plan, it says perfect implementation. There's a big red line through execution plan. I suck at it. I remind myself every day. So I've got a great team of people that can do an execution plan to help us achieve that vision, and bringing that and continuing to bring that talent in. And I really love talent from not our industry, bringing new ideas and new and fresh things. So I think that's super important as well.
Is there a characteristic or common trait that your executive team members exhibit? Or is there a certain thing that you look for once you see it, you're like, okay, this is the right fit?
Yeah, they all are 100% bought into our culture. That's everything. Like when we do interviewing, it's 9, 10 interviews, of which maybe 1 or 2 are around skills, and the rest of it's all just, can you fit into the culture that's here? That is absolutely critical. And so for me, it's really finding those folks that are humble, want to learn, want to grow. If we can get people that can adhere to our first core conviction, that goes a super long way. And that's really been the secret sauce of finding great people.
Again, on the capital front, you've got, premier investors at Brookfield, I believe is one of your biggest investors. Tell us about that type of partnership and how it's played into how your organization has evolved, how your company has evolved.
Yeah, so Ontario Teachers pension plan came in back in December 2016 timeframe, and they've continued to stay in the business. And so they and Brookfield are kind of JV partners on our business at 48% each. And Teachers been a longtime partner, right? They're a longtime group. We moved from their private equity group to their real estate group over that course of time. And Brookfield came in and took out the other shareholders back last October officially. And so they've been in, Brookfield's got, a lot of interest in data centers globally as well. But for us, what it does for us is we really needed to move from private equity into real estate and infrastructure. And so for us, that was a big gain to move us into a different cost of capital bucket.
What's the biggest challenge for you today along the entrepreneurial journey? I know the challenge has changed when you're going from 0 to 1 and then you're scaling now and you're well into the scaling phase. What's the biggest challenge?
What I'm really focused on this year is making sure, so I've got my executive leadership team, it's making sure my next level leaders, the senior leadership team, we are really focused on creating a legacy business that any one of us can take a one-way ticket to Tahiti, so to speak. And having a team of the next level leaders that really understand how our vision, our culture, our strategic anchors fit together and get used to make business decisions, that's where all my passion is right now, is on that phase. Because when that phase is done, when that set of next level leaders has got that ability to scale and to continue to grow and to continue to last from a legacy perspective, it's really what keeps me up at night as far as what I'm focused on and what I'm trying to work with. I do trainings and really try to work with that team to get them to that level of really understanding how that works organizationally.
Mm-hmm. What's a good insight that you could share with another entrepreneur that's trying to build a business, trying to build and scale a business? Is there kind of one insight that's above all that you would share with someone?
I would say trust yourself and don't trust yourself. So absolutely trust in what you believe to be the vision of what it is that you wanted to achieve, because that's what gets you up in the morning and makes it through those long and dark nights. But don't trust yourself that you are the only one that can figure out how to get there.
Mm-hmm. How have you been able to stay focused? People frequently talk about distractions or maybe pursuing something that's not core to where you're going. How have you been able to stay focused?
When I mentioned the part earlier where I said I think I was a crappy early stage entrepreneur, I didn't have a problem with that discipline. Anything that threatened scale for me, I pushed to the side. So I was very good at that discernment and have been good at that discernment. So much to the chagrin of investors from time to time or other folks from time to time, why won't we go do that deal? Why don't we go do those things? But I think that discipline around, is it a scale business or not, helps with that distraction, because everything has an opportunity cost and not all business is good. And you've got to be okay with saying no.
This is the question I ask every entrepreneur is, what drives you?
What drives me? It's the same thing that you think you can make an impact, like you really think that you can make some lives better. I'm so excited about this next round and, the amount of people and the amount of lives that get touched by it. And then being able to make some impact and contributions to our industry through innovations that we're doing and things like that and sharing those. And, I really think data centers, we've got a societal obligation to do this really well. And, we want to leave a lasting impact from a Compass perspective. And whether that be in our partners and our employees or in our customers or the communities that we serve. And we really want that Compass brand to be that across the board of all of those.
Excellent. 2 final questions. One is, can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Person that's had a profound influence, I got a few, but, I would say my wife has been there like through thick or thin with me. So that's been huge for me. My good buddy, Chris, helped me through some of the darkest times as a fellow entrepreneur. My coach, I had a life coach, Raymond, who's helped me through stuff. My buddy, Brian, definitely have helped me through some of those dark moments when you don't quite know where you're going to go.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I'm really passionate about getting the next generation of workers, the COVID kids that got screwed, and really giving them opportunity. I think the data center space is a great spot for that. All those kids got really hosed during that time frame, and how we can get them in vocations that can pay very well in the data center space, whether it be in IT and facility maintenance, security, you name it. But getting the next generation of folks into our space, we need them. And it's a great career opportunity, and really don't like what we did to kids during COVID.
Great. Well, that's a good note to end on. Chris, I want to thank you again for taking the time to chat with us today. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much.